And if you read the instructions here, it says remove the underscore character. This is where we get to see one of the elements of the IDE that I don't care about very much. You have to right click in order to rename. You can't just hover your mouse. That's okay. We will remove that underscore, and then we'll go back to our administration page here, and we reload, and it's going to ask us for that password one more time. It's going to check that password against the hash that is stored in password.config. Boom. All right, well, now what we're looking at is packages. This is a web-based package inspector that you can use with NuGet. Now, if you use NuGet with Visual Studio, you have seen the Add Library Package Manager, whatever it is in there, that brings up the window where you can see all the packages online. Here, you browse it through a web interface. There's a whole bunch of packages to take a look at, but the one I want to install right now, because I want to, is Facebook. This allows you to drop things on your page like a like button, recommend, comments, and so on. And you just click install. Bam, it's done. And it drops it right into your website, including all the extra little bits you'll need, including DLLs, extra code files, and so on. You can drop in jQuery. You can drop in the ASP.NET web helpers if you like, just by clicking the install button here. And there you go. There's lots of packages to explore, lots of things you can add to your site. I invite you to go take a look for yourself, add a few, and see how easy it is. Well, if you wanted a pretty URL in old school ASP, what you needed to do is nest a bunch of directories, and then if you wanted it extensionless, you needed to have an index page. You don't need to do that with Web Matrix. Let's take, for example, this page that I'm calling A. This new construct to Web Matrix called URL data. What URL data is a funky little dictionary that will actually be parsed values out of the URL. So in that URL, A is the name of the page, B, C, and D don't exist, but they got parsed out into a construct called URL data. So you can have pretty URLs and work with them rather easily. So let's do something a little bit more useful here. And I want to start working with data. So here on the dashboard, you can see you have a button called Manage Databases, and I can click on Add a Database to my site right there in the middle. And look at that, it did indeed. And that is using SQL CE. There's a .sdf file, dropped a SQL CE database into my app_data directory, and it named it right after the name of my site. And the interface here, this is the built-in interface for working with a database with Web Matrix, and you can click a lot of buttons and drop a lot of things down. I hate to say this, and I hate to sound negative, but this is not the most usable interface at all. And there's really no other choice as of yet. It is incredibly slow. But we're going to fix this coming up in a later episode. For right now, what I can do is I can just kind of slug through it, and I'll add a name and an email, and I'll have to slavishly add each one of those as strings and in varchars and so on. And then I'll save it and name the table name peeps for right now, peeps. And there, I have a database. And if I want to work with the data, I just click on the data button, and inside of here, well, I can double click and I can start working with the name and email. Might as well go with a Three Stooges theme here. Why not? Well, if you spend any time with the Web Matrix IDE, you will quickly find that it is, well, let's just say new, and it lacks a lot of polish that we have come to get used to in Visual Studio. Working with this IDE right here, working with this data designer is rather painful, but we're going to get around that later on. Now that we have some data, let's do something with it, like pull it out, play with it on the page. What I'll do here is something that's going to make a lot of you want to retch. We'll open up the database and run a straight query right from the page. Welcome to Web Matrix. Stay with me though, it gets better than this, I promise. So with webmatrix.data, which is what you see here, you just tell it, my database's name is Larry, and it will go in the app data directory and look for a SQL CE database named Larry. And then you just run some SQL against it using the query method as we're doing here. This is where things get pretty interesting. When you want to use this data, well, you just come on down to your page here. Let's delete this thing out. And then we're going to write some Razor code. And this is where things get a little bit more fun. That @ symbol right there says, here comes some Razor. And then you can just do a for each loop. As you see here, you open up the braces, and there's no getter tags. There is nothing that marks this as, well, kind of gross server-side code, just that @ symbol right there, which is kind of neat. And so what we can do is we can run a for each over the peeps inquiry, and then we can use the name right there. We'll just say we're going to use peep.name. And then we say, yep, peep.name. And then you might be thinking, wait a minute, we didn't define any classes or do any type conversion or mapping. That is true. What we're using here are new features in C# 4.0 called dynamics. Look at that. There is our data. So you might be looking at that SQL statement going, ew, but what I want you to focus on is how fast that all went down using dynamics. That's what we're going to be focused on with this entire series. How to do that speed, but do it right without shooting ourselves in the foot. And there it is. We've added some data, and we got 2 records coming out. One of the things that people react to when they see online SQL is, oh no, SQL injection attacks. And keep in mind that only happens when you concatenate SQL on a string. Here we don't need to do that. Look, I just appended an argument there. That @ symbol is an argument that goes into web matrix. It says here, I just want the first one, Mo. And it pulled it out. It's that easy to send in criteria to webmatrix.data. Now you might not like webmatrix.data, but we'll fix that later on. Another thing I wanted to show you straight away is how Razor helps you to keep things tidy in your application. So let's go into the app code directory here, and I want to add a new Razor page, and it is the CS.html. That is Razor. And what I want to add is something I'll call partials. And inside of here, you get some handy HTML to go in there. Why not? And what I'm going to do inside of here is I'm just going to take the markup that is contained inside my loop. I'm going to drop it into a helper. And you got to give that helper a name. Call it what I like. In this case, I'll just call it, peep heading. Why not? And I'm going to be accepting in a dynamic bit of data. In this case, I'll just call it a peep. And there we are. So I'll just paste that code in. That is HTML that is going inside of a helper. These are little chunks of Razor that you can use all of your application. A lot of people look at this stuff and say, oh, these scripting experiences are horrible. But I'll tell you what, Razor helps you try and do things the right way. So in this case, I can just output partials. And that is the name of my helper there, peep heading. And then I'll just pass in my dynamic little peep. Why not? And I save it. And there is all the output that is going to be coming down. And there we go. I got to close off that bold tag and we refresh. Look at that. Now it's bolded just to prove that it worked. And we have kept things fairly concise. There's no funky instrumentation or things you need to do to make it work. It just works. Now, welcome to Hacking Web Matrix here on TechPub. In this series, we're going to jump into Microsoft's latest web tool and see how we can bend it to our will. A lot of people would rather dismiss this set of tools, and I think that's a mistake. As you're about to see, there is a lot we can do here. Now let's address the first issue immediately. Isn't this supposed to be some kind of toy? Well, if you listen to Microsoft's PR about it, well, yeah, that would be true. But it's my firm opinion that they're not completely aware of what they've managed to create. They built the tool set to appeal to what they consider to be scripters, people who script out websites under the gun and care little about the software concepts underneath. Now, given this target, Microsoft decided to forego some of the things professional web programmers hold dear. A reasonable testing story, a high-level ORM tool, logging capabilities, separation of code and markup, and so on. In other words, everything we've learned over the past 10 years has essentially been ignored in favor of providing some contrived, simple experience to an audience that would probably rather use PHP anyway. To go any further, let's get some terminology straight. Just is Web Matrix anyway? Well, first, there is the rather silly Web Matrix IDE, and I call it rather silly, well, for reasons that you're about to see. It's not exactly the most high-powered IDE, and a lot of people wonder why they even made it. This tool is where the name Web Matrix comes from. Next is the markup language called Razor. This is a new view engine that Microsoft has released to go with MVC and also work here with Web Matrix. And finally, there is the new and mysterious Microsoft Web Pages. A very catchy title for, well, I don't even really know what these things are. They're Razor pages. They're also something more, as you're about to see. Put all of these things together and you have Web Matrix. And you can think of a Web Matrix website as sort of the old ASP.NET 2.0 website, complete with app code and app data. Stay with me, it gets better. I know many of you will have a very strong and negative reaction to this, well, supposed step backwards. Well, marketing and product positioning aside, Microsoft has actually given the development community a rather nice gift: the keys to build something of our very own. Now, as Microsoft developers, we're used to having a lot of stuff done for us, as opposed to the open source world where it seems that not a day goes by without the announcement of a new framework. Some people like this sense of stability, others don't. No matter which side of the equation you fall on, Web Matrix actually has something for you. Consider that Web Matrix utilizes C# 4.0, which has matured into quite a powerful language with dynamic aspects built right in, which we're going to take full advantage of real soon. In addition, it flexes ASP.NET underneath, which means you can use routing helpers, other constructs that you might already be familiar with. Finally, if you have a favorite tool, like exception logging with Elma, you can just plug that right in. It's just a DLL, and this is just ASP.NET after all. We have the pieces to build an opinionated framework here, something simple and elegant that is powerful but precise. Now, I like to think of Web Matrix as just above Sinatra's simplicity and just below Rails and ASP.NET MVC's structure. And to me, it sits in a really good conceptual spot. Simple, without all of the cathedral aspects of these larger frameworks. So let's get on with it. The series is going to be rather advanced. We're going to be building some tools that we're going to need to have with our new framework here, and we're going to do it fast. Now, I invite you to stop and rewind as needed, or just rewatch the whole thing a few times if you like. I'm not going to be diving into the code very much, well, at least the things that don't have anything to do with Razor or Web Matrix. I'm going to assume that you understand things like, well, how HTTP web requests work, or that you've created an extension method before, that you've written software. You're a fairly seasoned developer, and I don't need to go into the details. This is not a beginning web development course. This is for programmers who like to work in the web. Finally, to that end, you should be an experienced web developer as well. You should understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and those kinds of things. And if you don't know why I'm doing a particular thing, please pause the video and go check on Google. I'm going to try and go rather fast with this production. The goal of this series is less about creating yet another Microsoft framework, and it's more of a mental exercise on what it would take should someone decide to do so. I invite you to play along as we use Web Matrix. Let the ideas jog around your brain. Maybe they'll catch fire, who knows? Or just sit back and let the concepts float into your eyes. Maybe they'll help you while you're at work. Or better yet, if you like what you see, all of the code is up on GitHub. I'll show you the repositories during the episodes. Fork away. It will be interesting to see what we can build together. Now let's get on with some code. Well, typically here at TechPub, we start off with all the reasons why you should care about what it is you're going to learn. In this case, I'm going to assume that if you're an advanced or seasoned Microsoft developer, you probably are not going to care about Web Matrix at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to trust me. I think you will care about this when you're done with this series. And in honor of being positive, I'm going to start this whole thing off with the good parts of Web Matrix. But yes, I will finish off with the not so goods. So when you create a new site using Web Matrix, this is your dashboard. There's a number of things you can do in here, like set up publishing. Do you need web hosting? Lots of interesting things, but the thing I'm going to focus on right now is what I find to be one of the more powerful features that you can use with Web Matrix, and that is that it hooks right up into Microsoft's new package management system, NuGet. So if you click this link right here, as I'm doing, it pops open the Web Pages administration page, which is completely different from former administration things that you could do with membership in ASP.NET. We'll touch on that later. What you got to do is you got to enter a password or create a password for the administrator, who is, I guess, you. And it makes you walk through this setup process where you have to come in here and you have to go into admin inside of app data. There is a config file where your password is hashed. And if you read the instructions here, it says remove the underscore character. This is where we get to see one of the elements of the IDE that I don't care about very much. You have to right click in order to rename. You can't just hover your mouse. That's okay. We will remove that underscore, and then we'll go back to our administration page here, and we reload, and it's going to ask us for that password one more time. It's going to check that password against the hash that is stored in password.config. Boom. All right, well, now what we're looking at is packages. This is a web-based package inspector that you can use with NuGet. Now, if you use NuGet with Visual Studio, you have seen the Add Library Package Manager, whatever it is in there, that brings up the window where you can see all the packages online. Here, you browse it through a web interface. There's a whole bunch of packages to take a look at, but the one I want to install right now, because I want to, is Facebook. This allows you to drop things on your page like a like button, recommend, comments, and so on. And you just click install. Bam, it's done. And it drops it right into your website, including all the extra little bits you'll need, including DLLs, extra code files, and so on. You can drop in jQuery. You can drop in the ASP.NET web helpers if you like, just by clicking the install button here. And there you go. There's lots of packages to explore, lots of things you can add to your site. I invite you to go take a look for yourself, add a few, and see how easy it is. Well, if you wanted a pretty URL in old school ASP, what you needed to do is nest a bunch of directories, and then if you wanted it extensionless, you needed to have an index page. You don't need to do that with Web Matrix. Let's take, for example, this page that I'm calling A. This new construct to Web Matrix called a URL data. What URL data is a funky little dictionary that will actually Welcome to Hacking Web Matrix here on TechPub. In this series, we're going to jump into Microsoft's latest web tool and see how we can bend it to our will. A lot of people would rather dismiss this set of tools, and I think that's a mistake. As you're about to see, there is a lot we can do here. Now let's address the first issue immediately. Isn't this supposed to be some kind of toy? Well, if you listen to Microsoft's PR about it, well, yeah, that would be true. But it's my firm opinion that they're not completely aware of what they've managed to create. They built the tool. Can do better. And to show an example, if you haven't ever seen Rails before, I'm going to kick up a brand new Rails site here. I'm going to show you what migrations look like. And when you do Rails new and you have Rails installed, this creates a Rails site for you. And you just got to change the directory into the site. I'll open this up in TextMate, and this is what a Rails site looks like. I'm not going to spend any time talking about this, but look at inside my DB directory where I have all the DB configuration and stuff. There's nothing. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to use a Rails generator. This is a code generator. I'm going to generate up a model. Let's call it customer. And right in line here in the command, I can tell it the fields I want. Say, well, the first name is a string, last name is a string, and email, again, is a string. We'll just go with that. And this is going to invoke the code generator, and it's going to create a bunch of things for us. This is the thing I'm most interested in, the migration file. So as you can see here, it's created a migrate directory, and inside of here we have a file. It's just a Ruby code file with two methods, two static methods, if you will, up and down. This allows us to version the database up or down. And we version up, we're going to create a table called customers. Here's the fields we want to see, and when we use version down, it's going to drop that table. So this is actually going to write out the SQL. It's going to require creating a table and dropping a table, and it's going to execute those commands. Now, the way you do that is you give it a command rake db migrate. It will execute those tasks. And as you can see right here, boom, it's created a table called customers for us. There it is. And if we head back over to the project, you can see we now have a SQLite 3 development database. It's all encrypted. It's not really easy to read that stuff. But if we want, we can also now version back down. We can take that out. Just say rake db migrate, and we're going to tell it we want to go down to version 0 of our database. And then what it's going to do is it's going to drop the table. As you can see here, it's going to issue a drop table statement to SQLite. And if we come back in here, well, just trust me, the table is gone. Well, this is one of those things that when you show it to a Microsoft developer, they say, big deal, I've got a pretty good GUI here. What do I need migrations for? And then you start working with it, and then you begin to realize, oh, wow, that's neat. So let's do that right here. I'm going to create a brand new folder. I'm going to echo the Rails way of doing things and create a DB folder. And inside of here, I'm going to create another directory called migrations. And what I want to do is I want to make this kind of an all-in-one sort of thing. I just want to make a single page, as I did with Massive, and have it be our migrator tool. I'm going to call it migrator.cshtml and just use Razor for what it's good at. So this thing needs a title, and what I'm going to call it is Manatee. The hat tip to Miguel de Icaza for his reference to Entity Framework as a gracious manatee. I don't even know what that means, but I like the term. All right, so let's run it, make sure everything comes up. Yay, Manatee, there you are, you're alive. So there's two parts to this whole thing. There's the page that's going to be running the migrations, and there's the actual migration file itself. As you can see here, this is just a Ruby file, and there is the Ruby code. It's pretty simple to read, and even if you don't know Ruby, well, you should be able to kind of take a look at that stuff and see what's going on. Well, that's where it gets kind of difficult with a compiled language like C#. It's not terribly easy to create files that get slurped in the same way that Ruby files can just be appended in. But I had a brainstorm one day. What about just using JavaScript, or more specifically, JSON? Now, I know people might look at this and say, dude, JSON describes data or objects. It doesn't really describe procedures, kind of like Ruby does. But what if I could just have two objects in here that define up and define down? Now, if you're looking at this saying, I don't want to have to read JSON. Well, if you're a C# programmer, you're going to find this quite simple to read. If you've made an anonymous object before, then making JSON calls, or JSON objects, is so much the same. It is not that big of a thing. In fact, why can't I just have a create table data structure in here and give it all the direction it needs in order to create a table? So let's take a look at what this code might look like. So let's scoot this over so you can see it. So for my create table object, I'll have a property or a field in here called name with a string value. And there's only 4 data types in JavaScript: strings, arrays, numerics, and objects. And columns will be an array. And inside of there, well, you can see I'm just saying name, type string, name, description, type text, key value, key value. That is all a JSON object is. For drop table, it's pretty easy. All I got to do is pass in the name of the table I want to drop. That's it. Now, I know it doesn't look as sweet and terse as Ruby code, but this isn't all that bad. I think this will work quite nicely. So let's head into the migrator page one more time. And let's write out all the things that we need to do in order to get this to run properly. First thing I want to do, of course, is I want to read in all the migrations that are in the migrations directory. Next up, I need to decide, well, which way am I going to go? Am I going to go up or down? We'll do this in baby steps. We don't really have a testing framework that we can use here, so I'm just going to have to wing it a little bit, but we'll take care of that testing later on. All right, so we'll do this by convention. We'll just say that the migration directory is going to be, well, in DB migrations, and we're going to pull out all the files from in there. And for this, I'll just set this to new directory info. There we go. And then I'll just close that off. And then I'll just pull all the files out. So again, because I don't have a testing framework, I need to do this visually with baby steps. So I'm going to do a for each loop here and just spit out the files, make sure that I'm reading the files in correctly. And also, maybe I could massage the name a little bit. And I'll set this to a field set and then output the file name right here. And taking a look in a browser, cool, it's bringing it up. All right, well, let's work on that name a little bit. I don't really like the way it's showing up as a file name, and I want that to be a little bit different. So let's replace those underscores, shall we? Oh boy, so now it's all just smashed together. Let's put a space in there instead. Try it again. There we go. Well, that reads pretty well. I like it. Let's see if we can exclude that .js. All right, well, that should work. Let's refresh this. And all right, I think that is fairly descriptive. Let's go with that. So let's take a second and talk about this name, how I named this file. This is just an option. It's a super simple one. You need a sortable name, so I always chose 001, but the Rails guys do it with a year, month, and timestamp. Well, how you do it is up to you. If you're on a team, of course, you want to be a little bit more rigorous. If it's just you, well, do whatever you like. Just make sure it's descriptive and you can read it. That becomes important later on. Okay, well, now what I need to do is to make sure that what I'm reading in is sortable. Because right now it's just reading it into an array, and that works okay, but it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be sorted properly. Whereas a sorted dictionary, as you can see here, it is sorted on the key, and that is precisely what we want. So let's use that sorted dictionary. I know a lot of people might say, well, this isn't very performant, but remember, this is not a page that requires high performance. So we are going to call this function here load migrations. Now notice that I'm able to just drop a functions tag in right here onto the page. It doesn't need to be in its own special file. You can just drop page functions in, well, anywhere really. So I want to have this all on one page. All right, there we go. So let's refactor what we've already written into this groovy function, and we'll return a sorted dictionary of all the files that we have. And there we go. So this is fairly typical file IO code. If you don't understand it, I would suggest you pause the video, go take a look at StreamReader and how it works. What I'm going to do right here is I'm going to add to the sorted dictionary. So I'm going to add the text from that file as this string value. So the key is the file name. That's what gets sorted on. And then the value, well, the value is going to be the text from the file itself. So I just need to return the result and we're good to go. So now I just need to plug in my function and terse things up a little bit. So we will just call this variable migrations, and we'll say load migrations. And here we're going to pass in the migration directory. Keep it limber and loose. Don't want to have that embedded inside the function. And then let's go fix up our output code down below. And remember, it's not the file name anymore, it's the key. The key is the file name. So we need to output the file.key. There we go. And so this should just work. But what I want to do as well is I want to output the file.value, because that is going to be the actual JSON we're going to work with later on. Let's just take a look. Again, baby steps. All right, look at that. Okay, so it's working as intended. Rock on. All right, well, now let's do something with that JSON. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to assign the string JSON to a variable, and then to deserialize that, I'm going to use one of the helpers that comes with Web Matrix, which is JSON. It's in the system.web.helpers, and you can do some cool stuff in there. Look at this, JSON.decode into a dynamic object. You can also decode it into a typed object, but hey, we're doing everything dynamically. So I'm just going to tell it to decode chunk of JSON that I just pulled out of the file. There it is. I'll just pass in the JSON. Now I'll use a stream reader. There we go. I don't need that variable above. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so we're going to deserialize that. And then instead of putting a string into our sorted dictionary, I'm going to dump in the JSON object. And now what I should do here is, of course, set that to dynamic. There we go, because dynamic is being returned from the JSON decoder. If this is weird and you don't like all this dynamic stuff, give your eyes a second to get used to it, because it's really interesting the way it all works. Check it out. Look at that. So what is returned here is system.webhelpers.dynamic.json object. What is this thing? Well, it's just a special object for working with JSON. The only difference between this and an expando is that if you try and pop down a property that's not there, it returns null. That's it. Expando would throw, saying, I don't have that property. Well, what happens if we have invalid JSON? Well, let's check this out. Again, we don't have tests. We have to take baby steps. And good. It throws, and this is what it should do. It can't parse it, so it won't even let the page load. Now, we could handle this gracefully and just output some sort of red message, but hey, you know, this is a development time tool. Let's just let it throw. And there is the object. It actually tells you what it expects, even the line you need to go to. Okay, so now that we've cleaned this up, let's make sure everything works goody. The decoder is working right. Let's work with this stuff, but what is it we are working with specifically? We have a number of objects in here. We have a create table and an up object, and that create table has a field name. Let's see if we can work with those. Remember, we are working with dynamic here. Value is dynamic, so this means we can pretty much put whatever we want on this. So we just use the JSON structure and reference it directly. This is pretty handy. You have to think, and look at that. Bam. Products. That is the name of the up action, create table, dot name. So skipping ahead, I've just made a bunch of code here that will parse out that JSON, build up SQL string. I've actually passed this by a DBA to see what they think about all this stuff. And it was Rob Sullivan. He helped me format it to his own special style. So I invite you to go take a look at this and check it out. Again, I don't want to dive too deeply into this code, but if you want to go check it out, it's up on my GitHub. It's called Manatee. Wrote about it on my blog a little bit. And you can go take a look at the code and see how much you like it or dislike it. But here is our page. So this will take a look at all the files that we have in our migrations directory. If we click on it, it'll show us the SQL. And let's change the name here. We'll upcase this, or we'll make it proper case, that is. And what we want to do now is make sure that everything works as intended. Let's take a look at the SQL. Create table products. Whoops, let's open that again. Create table products. And look at that. We'll automatically toss in a primary key if it's not specified. And we turn string and money and all that other stuff into valid columns. And we click go. And it turns magically green, which means, hey, that table now exists in the database. If I come over here, let's refresh this. Boom, we have a products table. And let's open this thing up, and you can see our columns. There is our ID, name, description, price, all the things we specified in our JSON file. That's pretty darn handy. Well, if we come over here to one other table we have, what is this thing? Well, this is following a Rails convention. This tells us, this special table, what is our current version that we're running? And it's version 1. Well, if we want to go all the way back to the start, version 0, we can. We just hit go. This will actually run the down action that we specified in our JSON. And we refresh this. Notice that the table is gone. Dropped the table, and that's as it should be. And if we go and we take a look at schema info one more time, and we reopen it, take a look at the data, this is version 0. If you've worked with Rails before, then you understand why migrations can be quite helpful. If you're a Microsoft developer, chances are you're looking at this saying, why would I need such a thing? I have some good tooling. And indeed you do. People in the Rails community have found it quite useful. They are not as reliant on good tooling as folks in the Microsoft space. But just imagine when you don't have good tooling, like when you're trying to work with SQL CE, and all you have is that clunky web matrix IDE. That is when something like these migrations help out tremendously. You get the precise structure you want, schema that you recognize, and the ability to go forward and backward, which is really helpful. Well, in the next episode, we're going to tackle testing so I don't have to do this baby step visual stuff anymore. See you then. Working with Web Matrix is a lot of fun, but when it comes to testing, well, you're kind of left out in the cold. So that's what I want to tackle today. I want to build up a single page micro tester that will not only test some logic on my site, but will also test the site itself. Well, if you're unclear on the difference between a website, which is what we have here, and a web project, let's take a look as we try and test it. So what I'll do is I'll add in a testing project. I'll just use the test project that Visual Studio gives you. And we'll call it test project 1, big deal, add it to the solution, okay. And there we go. Okay, well, if you've ever used one of these things before, well, you know you got to add a reference to your web project, but hey, look at that, it's not there. Well, that's because it's a website. It is not a web project, it doesn't create a DLL, and unfortunately that means there is no testing story for Web Matrix in the same way there's no testing story for websites in ASP.NET. Well, that's no fun. So let's change that, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's add in a new item. For goodness sakes. I don't even have Visual Basic installed. Why do those templates keep coming up? It drives me nuts. Okay. I'm going to call this thing Quixote because someone told me the other day, well, adding all these things to Web Matrix is a bit quixotic, so why not? All right. So with this class, what I'm going to try and do is to build out some sort of reasonable testing ability. Let's call it that. And you get to come along with me as I do it. And what I want to do to keep this thing small and tight is to lean heavily on system.dynamics. It's my favorite new namespace in C#4. All right, well, I'm going to make this a static class. I could make it a set of functions, but I want to be able to use this in other frameworks as well, like web projects or maybe even MVC. And so inside of here, I'm just going to create our very first Go. I want to have something that looks like RSpec. And in RSpec, you can say, here is my context, and it just kind of outputs a nice message on the screen. And so I wanted this to read really well. So I want to say something like the following, and then dot describes a context. So I'll just output this in a set of H2s, and I will output it in an HTML string, as we've learned we have needed to do. Once again, I'm going to rely on Razor to be running the test. So we use the site itself as the test runner. A lot of people might say, hey, why would you be doing such a thing? And the answer is because I have to. I don't have a choice. So here's our test file. It's going to be inside the test directory. We'll just call it basics for right now. And what I want to do is I want to work with Quixote and say the following, but it's not showing up. Why isn't it showing up? It is a static method. Well, the simple reason is that I can't use it because I don't have the namespace declared. And that's something we haven't gone over yet with Razor. How do you declare a namespace? Well, you just use an at and then using and then Quixote. And now what I can do is go down and I have access to the following dot describes. Cool. And so I can put in something groovy, I suppose. The basics of Quixote. That's a pretty reasonable message. And when I run the application, let's run that page, the basics of Quixote. Now, it might not look like much just yet, but having that heading there is very important because the tests that lay out underneath it, well, it's going to set the context for those tests, as you'll see in a second. While I'm at it here, let's kill the layout. Now, we don't want to have a layout here. And this brings up something that I haven't talked much about, that semicolon. Why is there a semicolon there and not down there with the method? And the answer is that when you have open braces like that, it's a code block, whereas that @ symbol is a shorthand for response.write. You don't put a semicolon in there. If you do, you're going to see a semicolon on your page. It's just the way the Razor parser works. All right, well, I've set my layout to be nothing, and so I have a blank page. So I'm thinking of this thing syntax first. I want it to look like RSpec. I like RSpec, or at least a Ruby style of testing. And I love the way they can just write it.should. And then you give some kind of string explanation, and that gets printed out on your output. So I want to have something like this. It should have an expectation here. Just use that term expectation. Why not? So that is the syntax I'm after. And ideally what I can do in line is pass in some kind of code block. This is probably going to require a on-the-fly delegate or some kind of func. So we can do that. Let's create another class in here and we will call it it. Why not? And then we need to have a method called should. And that should function kind of like describes above. It's going to take in some kind of string description. We can call it expectation for now. And then right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to output some HTML. And for now, since we're prototyping, I don't really have a problem going guerrilla and outputting some HTML straight from a method here. One other thing is I'm adding pending in here. This is just taking the expectation. If I don't also pass in a delegate, in other words, the code that I want to inspect, well, then that is by definition pending. I just want to be able to write something like this. In the basics of Qt, it should be something groovy, and then have it noted as pending. There we go. And just to be on the safe side, to make sure everything's coming out right, we will do a visual check on this because we don't have a testing framework yet, and yeah, everything looks just fine. All right, well, let's add in the overload here so I can pass in some code that will be invoked and checked. Again, we'll return dynamic, and we'll take in an expectation as we did before. This time, let's accept in an action that we can descriptively call action. And in here, what I want to do is I want to do some kind of action.invoke. And that is going to be the test. But, well, unfortunately, that's not going to work because I need to return a value. So let's do a func dynamic. I don't know what's going to be returned. I'll just make it dynamic. And we will set a variable here to the invocation. But what is that invocation going to return? Well, since I called it func dynamic, it's going to return dynamic. So I will set result to be dynamic as well. It's a dynamic world, my friends. We just live in it. So I'll return that result. Simple as that. Dynamics everywhere. So now what I can do is I just need to do a func dynamic. And then I just need to open up a method delegate there. And I can run some code. So in here, I can just output a string. This is just the execution of code. I can say return anything because it's dynamic. It will be cast as dynamic. So I have a lot of flexibility here. All right, well, let's run this and see what happens. And the site comes up and boom, look at that. It works. Dynamics are a lot of fun. So let's go take a look. As we can imagine, it's being encoded. We'll have to fix that in just a second. But what I want to do now is I want to prove that it's actually working, that func dynamic invocation is indeed happening the way we expect it to. So let's just set a breakpoint. I wish I had a better testing framework, but there it is. It is returning that result. And that result is, boom, hi there. It's being executed as a little bit of code, and then I'm popping it out to the screen. Well, this is working pretty well, and in keeping with our baby steps methodology here, because again, I don't have a testing framework, unfortunately, let's clean this up a little bit. I could just return the result of the invocation, but I'd rather have this be a little more structured. So let's have the result actually be an expando object. And what we can do is we can tack on some properties on the fly. So for fun, let's just set the result itself to the invocation of the action. And I'll attach some meta to that result in the form of properties that I just make up on the fly. And I know what you're thinking. Why use an expando object? Why does everything have to be dynamic? It's too much of a guessing game. Wouldn't a better answer be to create a class called testResult? And on that class, we can have some properties that are explicit. I can use my IntelliSense. I don't have to guess at what you're doing. You can have a property that says, well, has this test passed? Maybe we have something else in there. Ugh. I'll tell you what, this is the old way of thinking. It's my little buddy VB the Clown. What we are working in here is a new sort of dynamic way of doing things. We're trying to make a framework that is easier to use, less friction, and so on. So rather than have a class that is structured up to look like something like a test result, what if we had a whole bunch of extension methods that returned something like dynamic? Then we could use those extension methods to return some type of result. That result could then be looked at and then spit out onto the page. Because in the dynamic world, we don't really care what an object is. We care about what it does. In this case, all we really care about is whether the object passed in equals the other object, and we're trying to return some sort of argument that says that it passed. That's it. Working with a dynamic language is just a whole lot easier once you're used to it, and I will admit it does take time to get used to it. So let's see if I can convince you of this. Now that I have my extension method, let's go back and use it. I can actually use this as an assertion right now. 1 dot should be equal to 1. Perfect. And our should be equal method returns dynamic, so we're still satisfying the func dynamic requirements of it.should. So that's good news. And result.pass is being declared inside the method. So we're good to go in here. In fact, watch me refactor this. There's nothing I need to do. I am still returning the result of the invocation. Welcome to dynamic programming. Refactoring in a dynamic language is pretty darn fun. And just to see it happen in C#, that kind of makes me happy. In fact, what we can do in here is we can say, well, if result.passed, and treat it as if it's a Boolean. In fact, we can do a little bit more here if we want to. If the result did pass, well, we can add a message to it, and we can say, yay. Remember, it's an expando object, so I can add properties as I go on. If it didn't pass, I can say boo. And let's color this up a little bit, shall we? We can even have the CSS set to a certain class if we like. I can just keep on rolling if I like. I can copy the output from above and create a variable here that will hold a more decorative message other than yay or boo. So let's format this stuff up and make the return message a little bit more understandable. Alrighty, here we go. Well, now we are changing things a little bit. We're not returning the invocation directly. What we are returning instead is a string. A bunch of HTML in here. And we're effectively changing the return type of our method, changing it from the expando object that we were doing before. Now we're just returning a string. But the calling code doesn't matter, and this is one of the great reasons for using a dynamic language, especially with the web. You don't have all this type dancing you need to do everywhere. So if you change return type, you break all your code. Now this, we just change to a string from an expando object, and everything is still just going to work. All right, so to prove that, let's go back over here and refresh it, and kaboom. Well, it's still encoded, but look at that, it worked. It understands that the code passes, 1 does equal 1, and yay. But we're going to need to fix that encoding stuff, and we sure can. If you recall, all I've got to do is return a new HTML string. Once again, I'm changing the type returned, but I don't have to do anything to the calling code because it's dynamic and it just works. Woohoo! Well, the only thing more fun at this point would be to make this look a little bit better. So let's add in a style sheet. And as every good demo person has, they have a style sheet at the ready. And indeed I do too. So let's save this. And I've dropped it into my style sheets. As you can see, there it is, test.css. And we'll go back over to our test page. And we can add a reference to it using the handy dandy helper that I added in a previous episode. And we'll just drop that right up here at the top. And remember, it's html.css and then tests. There it is. And let's go back and just refresh the page now that we have CSS reference in there. Ah, it looks much better. All right, we have a green passing test. 1 should equal 1. Okay, let's try appending. What does pending look like? Remember, we don't have to pass in any code, and that by default means it is pending and should be yellow. That's great. I'm following a TextMate sort of RSpec runner look and feel here. But what about when a test fails? So what we could do is we could say 1.should be equal to, well, let's try 2. And this should fail because remember our assertion just compares objects. And we can change our method. Be sad when it fails. We'll come over here. Refresh. Hey, look at that. It's nice and red. That's terribly exciting, don't you think? I think so. All right, well, let's skip ahead a little bit. Well, I've expanded the should bits here, these extension methods. And as you can imagine, if you've used a testing framework before, you need to do all kinds of things. Less thans, greater thans, nulls, should not be nulls, should throw, should not throw. And I've added all of those in. I've also changed the name of the class to assert. Seems to make a bit more sense. And I need to now refactor a few things out. I don't like having everything inside this should method. And so let's create a new one called execute it, and it's going to return dynamic. And inside of here, I want to have a try catch block, because if it fails, I don't want the entire page to fail, because the code that you're trying to test, if it fails, it shouldn't bring down your whole test runner. Good stuff. Now, if you're coding along with me at home, well, you're probably starting to realize the joys of working with an Expando object in Dynamics. It's really fun to create properties as you need them on the fly. So what we can do in here is just say dynamic result equals execute it, which is the name of our execution action right above. And it tightens things up a little bit for us. So let's go back to our page, make sure everything works. I'll refresh. All right, yay, nothing broke. It's kind of exciting, refactoring and nothing broke. Let's go look at our page source, make sure everything looks right. And I would say that it does, including our new message here, expected 1, but was 2. I added a few messages to all the should methods when I dropped in all that code. One of the really cool things you can do in Rails is to test the controllers on your site by sending posts and GET requests to them, the requests too. And you can actually test the return HTML, you can test links, you can test page title, so on. So that's what I want to do right now. I want to set up a poor man's RSpec, or poor man's cucumber, if you will. And I want to be able to send off GET and post and so on requests to my site. And to do that, I'll just set up 2 methods here. I'll call one GET, of course, and I'll call the other one post. And I can just take in some URLs and some post data. And for the post data, I think what I'm going to do here is I'll set up an anonymous object call. I could set up a dictionary and name value collection, but ugh, it is so noisy. I really like the anonymous call. It's very, very clean. So I'll just drop in some HTTP web request code that we've all written in the past. I'll just go grab the results of a GET request against page in the site. And so let's drop in a new test in here. And we can call it something silly right now. It should run a simple GET request. And we'll pass in the action right now. And we will use our brand new runner class. And we'll just say runner.get. All right, there we go. And we should make sure that it's a string that is returned, because one of the downfalls, one of the downfalls of working with Dynamics is you can't have extension methods on Dynamics because, well, the compiler doesn't know what type it is until the site actually runs. All right, so that is one problem with Dynamics. So that means we got to come back here and set this to a string. Well, no worries. So let's go back over here, and now we can say homepage dot. All right, and then we could do one of our shoulds, and we could say something like should contain, and then the words welcome, which we know it does. Righto. Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. Whoops. And it looks like, oh boy, yep. I got to do a return here because it's a func dynamic. It's got to return a value. Okay, so let's run this again and we will load this site up. And all right, our GET request works. That's exciting. And so probably what we should do is rewrite the name of this test. Home should say welcome. There we go. I don't want to stop there. I want to keep going here. Let's make this thing really readable. That's my goal here. Readable, easy to use. Let's add in another context because we are indeed doing GET requests in the page. So now we have the following describes the home page, and look at that, it reads so much better. The home page should say welcome. That's kind of what I'm after with this whole thing. So let's skip ahead one more time. I have the core of what I'm after, and syntactically, you can see what I'm after. Something easy to use, easy to read. And here's the code that I ended up with. And if you're curious and want to review this code, I won't go over it here, but I did put it up on GitHub. And if you want to head over to my GitHub repository. Here it is. It's called Quixote. It's up there, and right now it's one file, and that's what I like. One file, and it's an optional CSS file. You can drop right into your app code, and off you go. Added a few things like some sugary overloads. So instead of it, you can also say they. Silly things like that. But it makes it so much more readable than your typical slammed together in-unit tests. And this also gives you a way of testing your site using get and post, which I really dig. I also added in some exception handling, so when an exception does go off in your code, well, that it doesn't break your site and it actually looks like a reasonable message. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Should you get an error, and what you can do is you can just, let's just throw. We'll just throw right from inside here. We'll say throw new exception, and we'll make sure we don't scare everybody. This is a test. We'll come back over here and refresh the page. Boom. This is what happens when you have an exception. Complete with a stack trace and line numbers and all that good stuff. All right, well, in addition to this, I have buffed out the get and post capabilities of the runner. So let's take a look at get requests. The first thing is that you no longer need to pass in full URLs, which is sort of silly. Now you can just pass in a simple virtual URL, and that'll work just fine. In addition, I have added a little structure to the return from get and post. As you can see here, we have form values, HTML, headings, links, the request object, the response object. So there's a lot you can actually test in here. It kind of makes it a lot like RSpec. So if you want to test the body or the HTTP status code, you sure can. In this case, I want to scroll down and I want to check the title. Let's do that. And we can say home.title should contain and then welcome. So we can make sure that the title on the home page says welcome. And I know that it does. So let's go back over here. We'll refresh this. Whoops. Gosh, I do this every time. It should say return. One of these days I'll remember that. But hey, I just made the darn thing. How can I be used to it? There it is. Okay, so it actually did a full-blown request on our site, and it inspected the return and parsed out the title. And believe it or not, it actually works. Okay, let's rename our test so it reads better. I think that reads just swell. Let's refresh that. All right, cool beans. And while we're at it, I should go back and rename this from get request to homepage. You might be thinking, why do you keep renaming things? Because part of the thing I'm after here is aesthetic value. So let's do another one just for fun. It should have 4 links on the homepage. And what I'm going to do here is I'll pass in runner.get again, but this time I'm going to say home.links should have a count of 4. And I happen to know that it does indeed. And this time I'm not going to forget to use return. And let's refresh this. Yep, indeed, has 4 links. Packed a surprising amount of functionality in this thing. If you want to go have a play with it, again, it's up on GitHub. I welcome your feedback. Well, it sort of goes without saying that if you have some deeper logic that you need to implement for your site, you might just want to break it out into a separate project. And then if you're more comfortable in NUnit or XUnit or whatever, you can use that. This is sort of a high-level, very light testing framework that is used to do something, because we don't have anything for WebMatrix as it stands right now. So this brings us to the end of our Hacking WebMatrix series. I hope you've enjoyed it. My goal was to inspire. Again, all of the stuff you've seen here is open source. I will continue to work on it because I'm very much enjoying it. And I really like WebMatrix. I think it offers a lot of flexibility to advanced developers as well as beginning developers, any developer really. And if you have any questions, please do drop me a line, rob@techpub.com. And if I come up with another bit of inspiration, I might just tack it on to this production. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it.
Hi guys, this is about an internet crime report which is given by the ICQ website, that is Internet Crime Complaint Center. These reports are created based on the total number of crime complaints received by this website per year. The partners of this website is FBI and the NW3C, that is National White Collar Crime Center. So these are the submissions of FBI and NW3C, and this NW3C is funded by Bureau of Justice Assistance. So you can also check whether you are in the blacklist by visiting this website. Let me show you. So let us have a look at this website. Of course, I'll also be in the blacklist. So if you keep on searching about hacking related informations, you will be automatically listed here due to your suspicious activity. These automatic systems have a list of keywords in its database like terrorism, explosives, hacking, cybercrime, etc. If you searched anything like this and the keyword you entered is matched with their keyword which is in the database, for example, if you searched for killing terrors, you will be tracked automatically and caught by the police and you will be investigated. So be aware of the internet. You are being watched. Even if you typed a text like this, and erased it without entering it, it will also be stored in the permanent database. Even there are lots of systems like this, the hacking activity and cyber crimes are also increasing. Hackers always have their own way of attacking the target. So if you feel you got hacked and you need help, you can contact this, you can file a complaint in this ICQ website. So these reports are based on the complaints given by the individuals who are all facing problems due to their cyber criminals. So this ICQ website is useful for both the victims and for the law enforcement agencies, which helps in resolving their cyber complaints. This is the actual report provided by this website up to the year 2013, which states about 2 to 3 lakh cybercrime complaints are constantly being received from the year 2004 to 13. This states the top 5 countries ranked by ICQ in the year 2013 by the total number of complaints received. This report states that it received most of its complaint, about 90.63% is received from the United States. This is the detailed picture which shows top 10 states from where it is receiving most of its complaint. So the final loss is about $100,000 due to these cyber activities, which is given by the report in 2013. These reports are created at the end of each year. The reports for 2014 is expected to be in the progress. You can check these reports at ICQ website. You can also check it in our course, and these reports will also be updated yearly in this section. So stay connected. Catch you up in the next video. Thank you. So what is meant by data breach? A data breach is an incident in which sensitive, protected or confidential data has potentially been viewed or used by an unauthorized user. Most often the term data breach is applied to describe the theft of data. There are hundreds of ways that lead to loss of personal information. Data breach occurs almost in every sector from healthcare to IT industry, but the impact may vary from each and every sectors. Companies that suffer data breach lost more than just confidential information. Their reputation, profitability and productivity can all be negatively impacted due to these type of data leaks. Some of the real world examples of data breach includes the Sony PlayStation network breach. The network was down for more than a month and the breaches resulted in the leak of more than 12 million credit card numbers as well as the millions of email addresses and passwords, including their home addresses and other data stored in the Sony PlayStation network. The another one was Edward Snowden NSA leak. He was a former national security agency contractor, and he is estimated to have stolen about 1.7 million top secret documents and threatened to continue to release them to public, which may potentially cost about some million US dollars. I personally like this guy. So be aware of protecting your documents and personal data. And also just have a look at the report which I attached below for getting a general information about the type of data breaches and how much of these breaches affecting each sectors individually. Thank you. By definition, hacking is the practice of altering the features of a system to accomplish a goal which is not in the scope of the purpose of its creation. Hacker was a term used to denote a skilled programmer who is having more knowledge in operating systems and in networking. But currently hacking has more negative implications, and so the term hacker. Though there are many classifications under the term hackers like grey hat, light hacker, blue hat, etc. The two major groups of hackers are black hat and white hat hackers. A white hat hacker is also known as the ethical hacker, who perform hacking for a legitimate reason. They either perform hacking on their own system to test their security level or for a company within a contractual agreement. A black hat hacker, on the other hand, is a malicious hacker who violates the computer security for little personal gain. They break into the secure network to destroy or to steal the data. However, every hacker, whether it is a black hat hacker or a white hat hacker, all of them have the following general procedures and stages for breaking into the system or to achieve their goal. Let us discuss them one by one in the following videos. Thank you. This is the initial stage that was followed by every hacker before attacking the target. It is very essential for a hacker to collect as much information as possible about his target for launching an attack. This phase is technically termed as reconnaissance in the field of hacking. There are two types under this reconnaissance, as active and passive reconnaissance. In active reconnaissance, the hacker collects the information about his target directly. For example, telephone calls to the help desk or technical departments, which also known as social engineering. In passive reconnaissance, a hacker collects information without a direct interaction with the target. Information gathering is probably the longest part. Sometimes it may take weeks and even some months for collecting the information. A black hat hacker uses a variety of sources to gather such information about the targeted network. For example, collecting the information which is publicly available in the internet, as in social media websites like Facebook and in other websites, or even from the email which is sent by the target. Let me show you some of the example for collecting informations. For example, if you want to know the financial detail of the company, just visit www.finance and enter the name of the company you want. Let's take it as Google. It's constantly been increasing. So this is the financial detail of Google. Let's take Facebook. You can also get these financial details by visiting finance.yahoo.com and enter the company you want. So these are the method for collecting the financial information about a company. If you want to know the personal information, you can visit the Facebook profile or some social media platforms, like what is their personal email ID, date of birth, field of interest, etc. If you want to track a person from their unknown cell number, or to verify whether it is a real number, you can visit this truecaller.com. And enter the number you want. So this is me. You can enter any number or any unknown cell number to verify whether it is the real user or some fake numbers. For collecting a history of a website, you can visit .archive.org and enter the web address here. So this is the website history of Google from 1998 to till date, that is 2015. Let's have a look at Google at 1998. These are the snapshots at Google. So this is how Google looks like in 1998. So these are the some of the ways from where a hacker collect informations about his target. This is often the most difficult task for a hacker. A hacker spends about 90% of the time in collecting the information about his target, and only 10% for collecting the for launching the attack. So let's move on to the next stage. Thank you. This is the second stage in the hacking process. Once the hacker has enough information about his target, he begins the process of scanning, looking for a weakness in the system to launch the attack. Scanning refers to the pre-attack phase, where the hacker scans the network for specific information about his target. This phase includes the use of dialers, port scanners, network mapping, and vulnerability scanners. These are some of the tools used in hacking. Port scanners are tools used to detect the nature of the service running on the targeted machine, and vulnerability scanners are used to detect the weakness on the targeted machine and potentially detect thousands of vulnerabilities. During this phase, a hacker collects information about his target, like what the type of firewalls, routers, and the operating systems are being used by the victim. So this is all about the scanning process. In this video, we will be discussing about the third stage in the hacking process, which is gaining access. Gaining access is the most important phase of an attack in terms of potential damage. Although a hacker don't always have to gain access to the system to cause a damage, the hacker attacks the system after knowing all the possible weakness to enter into the system by using the knowledge he got from the previous stage, that is the scanning and the information gathering stage. This is the most important and most dangerous stage. Even if only one of the 100 network users have a weakness in their system, it could lead to an exponential increase in the network exploit through distributed zombies software and the internal denial of service attack. The degree and the scope of attacks depends much on the level of access the hacker gains and their level of skills. So this is the third stage in the hacking, that is gaining access. Let's move on to the next stage. So the fourth stage in the hacking process is about maintaining access. Once a hacker has gained access, they want to keep that access for future exploitation and other attacks. Not all hackers remain connected to the exploited network. Hackers can continuously to sniff your network looking for more information to use against you. Hacker can able to export sensitive information such as credit card numbers, usernames and passwords by using the Trojan. Maintaining access allows hackers the benefit of time to collect the information they need for the purpose of their attack. When he maintains his access, he can able to upload, download or manipulate data applications and configurations on the owned system. So the final stage in the hacking process is about covering the tracks. Covering tracks refers to the activity that a hacker does to hide their actions. Most hackers will attempt to cover their tracks and footprints as carefully as possible. It must be likely that low-end hackers and newbie hackers will get caught at much higher rate than expert level hackers who know how to remain hidden and anonymous. The main reason for covering the track is for removing evidence of hacking or to avoid legal actions. Placing programs inside a network to continually send sensitive information out to anonymous drop-off points allow hacker to cover their tracks while maintaining access. A hacker can able to cover his information by altering log files, tunneling and steganography. Tunneling is performed to hide one service to cover another service to increase the difficulty of finding them. And in case of steganography, this is the most interesting topic and it's likely the art of hiding information inside the objects that are not obvious such as image, video and audio files, etc. Let's discuss about this technique in the following videos. Thank you. In this section we are going to discuss about hiding and securing data. This technique is called as steganography, which is the art of hiding or concealing a secret message or image or a file within another message or image or a file. In this section I'll show you how to hide such information and cover the data in an easy way. We are having a set of hacking tools to perform data hiding. These techniques are used for securing data in the cybercrime department and in the defense. While a black hat hacker uses these type of techniques to cover his tracks, the tools we are going to use in this section have a special set of algorithm for hiding the data. The main purpose of using this type of technique for hiding a data is to prevent data leaks. For example, if you hide a secret message in an image file which is more confidential, even if someone got the image file, they can't able to identify easily that the image or video is actually having a secret message in it. So even if the image file is in wrong hands, the hidden message is not seen. These type of messages cannot be identified easily by firewalls. This is often followed by security agencies, hackers and in forensic departments and in some companies for preventing data breach and for secret communications. There are different types of steganographic techniques like audio, video and image, etc. Let's see how to perform data hiding in the following videos. Thank you. So in this video we are going to discuss about how to hide a secret message or a text file within an image file. Here we are going to use a tool called QuickStego. Just open an image. Let's take this image. For hiding a secret message, just type here. We are going to hide this message in this picture. Click hide text. The text message is now hidden in the image. Now we have to save this image. Let's name it as hidden and click save. Now we clear this image and open another image for testing. This is the real image, that is original image. It doesn't have any text or a secret message. And this is the image which we hide a secret message. Here it is. We can also perform this technique using another tool called cryptapix. Let's take an image file. This is the original image, that is 2. Let's hide a secret message in this. We have to set password for additional protection. Let's simply 1 2 3 4 5. We have to save the image. We can also choose the file format. Let's name it as QWE. So this is the image that is having the secret message in it. For extracting the message, just go to Stego and click extract. Here is the message. The text hidden by one tool cannot be detected by another tool. This is the image that we created using the quick Stego tool. We can't able to read anything from this. That is the secret message. We can able to extract a message from this. The image having the hidden message in it shows no difference from the original image. Let's have a look. This is the image which is having the hidden message, and this is the second image, and this is the third. But this is the original image. All the four resembles the same. This is how we perform a data hiding or hiding a text file in an image file. Let's move on to another topic. Thank you. In this video we are going to see how to hide a data inside an audio file. We are going to use a tool called Deep Sound. For hiding a data inside an audio file, let's take audio. Let's take this audio. So this audio is having about 6.783 MB of free space. For hiding a data inside this audio, we need to add file, that is our secret data. Let's take this text document. Now we need to encode this into this audio file. This secret file is now hidden in this particular audio. Let's have a look at that audio. This is that. This audio is now encoded with this secret document. If you want to extract this file, you can extract it here. The file is extracted in the same directory. Here is the hidden documents. You can also perform this audio steganography using another tool called Coagula and Audacity. So this is the coagula. You can use this type of audio steganography for sending your bank account numbers or passwords. We need to encode this sound, render without blow. You are going to save this sound file. For visualizing this audio file, you can use Audacity or Sonic Visualizer. Let's open that audio file. This is the audio which is having that message 1 2 3. Just change this to spectrogram. This is that 1 2 3. So this technique is called the audio steganography. So this is the method for hiding any data inside the audio file. Let's have a look at another steganographic technique. Thank you. In this video we are going to discuss about how to hide data in a video file. We are going to use a tool called a data hider. This is the trial version. Let's take a video. Let's take this theory bin. This is the encryption algorithm. We need to type a password. For creating a secret storage in this particular video, click OK. Now we have to add a file. You can add any kind of file. Let's hide this data in this data, that is in this video file. We are hiding a video in another video. Click apply. Now this video is having a secret video. Let's check it done. We need to type the password for entering this storage. Here is the hidden informations. So this is the way to perform a data hiding inside a video. Then this is called a video steganography. Let's have a look at another steganographic technique. Thank you. In this video we are going to see how to hide your document file inside an image file. Here we are going to use a tool called WebStigo. So this is the WebStigo tool. We need to encode the Word file in an image file. So click encode. You need to select the file. Let's take this document file. Now we have to select the carrier file, that is the image file. Let's take this image. Click continue. This is the destination file. Name it as WebStigo. Save. Click continue. Finished. Let's go to that destination area. So this is the image which contains this hidden document, and this is the original image. Let's delete this hide data. Let's decode this image, which is having the secret document file. Next. Continue. Let's have a look. Here is the hidden document. So this is the way to hide a Word document in an image file. This technique is called the document steganography. Let's have a look at the another steganographic technique. Thank you. Hi guys, in this video we are going to discuss about email steganographic technique. Email steganographic technique is nothing but hiding a secret message within another message or a word. For performing email steganographic technique, just visit this spam mimic website. There are generally two methods for performing this encoding option. You can perform it either with or without the password. Let's go for with the password. Let's give it as 1 2 3 4 5. Here we are going to encode the secret message 1 2 3 ASD. Click encode. So this is the message which is having a secret message encoded in this. You can copy this and send it as a mail to another victim or another user. Let's copy for decoding. So let's decode it. If you decode it without a password, you don't get any results. So we got to go for decode for with a password. Password is 1 2 3 4 5. Paste this and click decode. Here is the secret message which is decoded from the previous message. So this is the way for performing email steganographic technique. These techniques are used for sending a secret message or a bank account number or a password to another user. So these are the steganographic techniques. Let's move on to another topics. Thank you. In our security program, we found that many of the Facebook accounts are being hacked by hackers. So we decided to share some knowledge on Facebook hacking so that you can able to secure your own account from hackers. So in this section, we are going to learn how Facebook accounts are hacked by hackers and the method of securing your own account by hiding all of the possible chances for hacking our account. This is another interesting topic. I'm sure that many of you are eager to know how Facebooks are hacked. Also be aware that there are no free tools for hacking Facebook accounts and other social media websites. But there are many fake tools available on the internet and they really don't work. It's just a tool created by the hackers to spy your computer and to hack your network. Don't believe in such type of tools and don't download any hacking programs. Almost all of them contain a virus to hack your system. However, Facebook can easily be hacked by the following methods. It is often hacked easily when you have physical access to the system or the user. These are the only few methods that we can able to hack Facebook accounts easily. It is not applied for only Facebook accounts but also for other platforms. So let's discuss about them. One of the methods for hacking your friend's Facebook account is using a keylogger. A keylogger is nothing but a keystroke logger or a spyware. This can be done only when you have a physical access to your friend's computer, or you need to install it in your computer and let your friends to use your computer. When they try to open his or her account on your computer, you can get their password. This keylogger can also be used as a child monitoring software to monitor their activity on using their computer. There are generally two types of keylogger, as hardware and software. Software keylogger are installed in computer for recording the screenshots and keyboard strokes, etc. While hardware keyloggers are used in hardware devices such as PlayStations, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, USB, etc. These keyloggers have hotkeys and it cannot be easily detected whether it is installed in your computer or not. So the person who knows the hotkey combinations can alone able to access the keylogger in the system. Hackers send this type of keylogger by means of attaching it in a Trojan and along with other freeware hacking tools, which install this type of keylogger automatically into your system and starts monitoring your activity, and also sends your log details to hacker who is in the other end. Let's have a look at this type of keylogger. Here we are going to use one of the keylogger named Advanced Keylogger. I already installed it and I know the hotkey combination, that is Ctrl Alt Shift and R. So this is the advanced keylogger. It records keystrokes. We are going to enable it. Now it records every keystrokes. Let's have a look. Let's type something like hacking. Now just go to this keylogger, keystrokes. Let's close it now. The keylogger is now running behind the programs without user's knowledge. Now let's open a Facebook account. When we typed your password, it is also be recorded. Let's have a look at that keylogger. We are going to press the hotkey combination, that is Ctrl Alt Shift R for this particular keylogger. This is a trial version.